Hi everyone. We are going to start learning the software development lifecycle. Actually, this is the change management lifecycle, and the software development lifecycle is part of it. Many of us get confused with the project management lifecycle and the software development lifecycle. They are two different. The reason is the project management life cycle is basically when the project starts with the business need or when the problem or an opportunity arises. And then it goes through basically understanding what is a problem and what is opportunity and defining the solution scope at the high level, and from there defining the business case and obtaining the fundings. Once the funding is done, then basically project goes on the floor. At the time we define the elicit and define the requirement and define the solution fully, and then align that solution with the organizational current and the future capabilities, and then we weigh the options, which option is the best. And in that case you may come across with various the solution options, and from where you may have to make a certain decision. For example, buy versus build, or the buy and then customize it, and that's kind of a combination of both buy and build. While doing that, then if you are basically in obtaining for if you're opting for building a solution from the scratch at the time, then you may think about one or more solution you need to build in order to basically uh, um, achieve your goal, achieve your future state goal. So in that case you are basically expected to um, uh, you are expected to basically um, analyze which solution is best, and then uh, what are the pros and cons of uh, you know um, of each of the options you are basically considering, and put them together and provide these clear choice options to the management. And you can, along with that, you can also recommend which option is the best among all and why it is the best. So once the option is selected and then vendor is selected, after that basically the vendor or the IT team, if you are building that solution internally, so then you have to basically select your the internal the IT team, right? So after we decide on the IT team, then the software development life cycle will begin. Now remember that software development life cycle is a part of your project management life cycle, and again software could be one or more. One or more the softwares are required basically to build a project or basically to take care of the change. So that's the basically difference what you need to understand between the project management life cycle and the software development life cycle. This is technically the project management life cycle. Now, this is a diagram basically. I'm not very sure whether you can see. Let me just increase a little bit. Yeah. Right. So, this is the basically the part here is initiation, then system concept development or the vision document, then planning phase, requirement basically analysis phase, design phase, construction phase, integration phase, testing phase, deployment phase, option maintenance phase, and the last is of course is basically your disposition phase. So this is the end-to-end the life cycle what we have defined here. Okay. So let me just uh, go through them, and let us understand what are these phases and what is the business analyst role in each of those phases. Okay. All right, so this is basically we talk about is the initiation phase. This basically begins when the business need or an opportunity is identified. Okay, and this is basically identified in terms of the problem or an opportunity. Okay, say for example, there is the existing solution that is either outdated or it is not capable of taking care of the current needs, or maybe in the near future it might become absolute. So that is a problem, right? Or the current solution is not adequate and you may require to basically add an additional uh, the functionality or the features, or you may have to update the database, and so on and so forth, like that. Okay. So then here we talk about when the business analyst need is identified in terms of a problem or an opportunity. So that is when the project kicks off. Once the business analyst analyzes and defines the problem area or an opportunity, the impact analysis is done to understand the impact of the problem or opportunity on overall business. Now this is important factor which we need to understand what impact it has, because if the impact is not significant and we may want to not do anything, that is also fine. So that could be also one of the options, right? Not doing anything. So that's what we may consider. So, but if the impact is significant and the impact is severe, then the solution needs to be implemented quickly. Okay. Now, when we talk about basically an impact analysis is done to understand the impact of the problem of, or opportunity on overall business to define future action. A project manager may be appointed at this stage to evaluate the feasibility of the solution, whether a possible solution can be implemented. And then we will basically consider that if the solution is identified as a doable, the project manager will present the estimation of the cost and the schedule of the new solution based on the high level requirement in terms of the features and functionality of the solution. The business need document in a concept proposal or the terms of reference is basically uh, uh, defined. After the concept proposal is approved, the system concept development phase begins. Okay, so these are the basically your activities. Now let's go to the next level. Here, the BA's role in the initiation phase. The BA is the one who will basically understand what is the problem or what is the opportunity, and then he will identify who are the people who are impacted, and then he will communicate and collaborate with all the stakeholders to understand what is the impact and what kind of a solution they expect. The difference between SDLC, change life cycle, and the project management life cycle. Okay. Um, this is still a question. Let me just stop here and basically let me finish this part and then I will answer your question, Tosin. Um, so when a business analyst basically define the collaborate with the different stakeholders who he or she has identified are the stakeholders who are impacted by the problem and opportunity. So the business analyst will have to basically understand what is the problem and how much impact is there in terms of the revenues, in terms of the technology, in terms of the customer and convenience, and many other things have to be basically discussed. Okay, so based on that they will define the problem or the opportunity, and again there could be there could be some high level solution can be recommended and how it can be implemented, especially if you're writing the TOR, that is a terms of references. So you may have to include these details as well. Okay, so that is how you can basically define your business need, define the impact, the source of the problem or source of the opportunity, then what is the impact and what kind of a solution will be suitable, and then you can define the what is a way forward. Okay, so these are the items you can basically include. Now let me just answer the question here. What is the difference between the SDLC, change life cycle, and the project management life cycle? Yes, that's a very good question. Now I'm not going to give you the IT related the example. I will help you to understand and correlate. For example, a construction company wants to basically build an complex, the residential complex. So what you will need is you will need an apartment, right? So his main objective is basically build residential buildings, but then he will do, he will just not going to build the residential, the blocks, he will also have to build other things in order to make that whole project successfully. The project will include the residential block as a main the agenda. Then along with that, within that there could be the roads, clubhouse. There are like the fence, security, and the again intercom facilities. And there could be some jogging track. There could be gym. There could be, if it is a really large residential colony, then there could be hospital, shopping mall, and then there could be school. So this is what the whole project will consist of, right? So within that, the project will consist of many of these small items. So when you build one residential building, then residential building when you're building, so right from the digging that what we call and then building the foundation till finishing the building, that's again one piece of your basically the project which they need to complete. Like that, there will be many pieces. So when you talk about one residential building, they have to build from the scratch and then finish it off. So that's one of your basically end-to-end life cycle, a part of the project, right? When you complete all of that, finish everything, then you are completing the whole project. Is this clear? So when you're talking about is these solutions, then the solution could be one bedroom apartment, residential building, two bedroom apartment. There could be what we call is row houses or some kind of the uh, townhouses within that. There could be swimming pool. There could be picnic place. There could be many other things which are involved in that, right? Again, another part which I wanted to let you know that if you are considering just building the whole residential building, is your job is done? No, your job is not done. For example, you are constructing the building, residential building, you are providing them the pipeline for the waters, you are providing electricity, and you have completed the wiring, you have completed the what we call the sewage and all those things. But person cannot live inside unless they are connected with external the the whatever the sources. For example, you done the electricity wiring, it is not going to bring the electricity, right? Even if you put the bulb, it will not, it has to be connected, it must be connected to the grid, then only then you get the electricity. Same like that, independent solution will not work, it has to be basically connected with the other existing the systems and existing other solutions, and they should be able to communicate with each other, then only then the system will start working fully. Till then it will not work. Same thing like that, when you have laid the pipeline and fixed the tap, but the water is not going to come in, you have to connect that with the external municipal water pipeline, right? Then only then you will get the water. And of course there will be many other technical aspects are there which we don't want to get into that, but we need to basically consider this factor as well. So this is the basically difference between this building the software and connecting that with the existing solutions, right? And again, when you talk about the project will consist of many other things, right? Now you are talking about the change. What do you mean by change? Now think about change is basically again a larger picture. Like a software is a small picture, project is will be the higher, the change is much higher. What is the change you are looking at? For example, the construction company has said that we are going to bring in change. So what change they saw? They saw basically barren land, and then they said that this is the change we want to bring in, this is a project we will implement. There could be multiple projects they may have in mind. One is a residential, there could be one the other the commercial buildings also they want to include, and then they want to build a kind of a township which may consist of several other projects within that. So they may say that, okay, this is what we have and that is what we need in order to go from point A to point B. So in that case, when you are talking about the change, then you may also talk about what we have, what is our current capabilities, and based on that, what is our experience, and based on how much the funding we have. Many other things may include basically before you consider the change, and then change will not happen. Then you will have some architectural design. You will basically talk about what you want to do. So that's a high level requirement. We want to build, like for example, 500 apartment complex. Then we want to have few townhouses. We want to have one school. With this, all that your high level requirement, right? You are not getting into the detail right now. You are just mentioning high level. So when you mention that, and that is a kind of a square feet is calculated approximate, then you know this is a kind of amount of money is required. So that is the your basically change. But when you are talking about the change, you are implementing all of that. For example, you put in your clubhouse, you build the road, you build the apartments, everything you did, and you ask the people to come and stay. But anything else is required for you to basically transit and that into a proper residential apartment building complex? Yes. Then you may need to put in the security guard, train them, put them into that. You may need to make that operative. What do you mean by operative? It has to have an operating model so that you have a people functioning them. For example, if it is a convenience store, it has to be basically given it to people, rent it out to the people who will basically run that convenience store. So that is what creating the comfort to the residential the residents who are going to stay there. Same thing, you build the hospital, but will that work? No, it will not. Even if you put in the equipment, no, you have to basically A is that bring the people, trained people to function that one. The second B, you have to create the process of basically functioning. For example, if you put in a small hospital or the clinic where people can take the advantage of that, right? So what you are going to do, you're just not, so then you need a software to basically operate that. You need a people to operate that. You may need some the billing system. You may need some within that there could be a medicine dispensary, there could be some doctor's chambers, there could be so many things, right? But then to function that also you need a kind of a process, and that also is another project. So when you are moving from place, if you are looking at that, putting up the project is one part, but making it functional is another part. And how do you make so many items functional? That is the change. So from going from the current state, going towards the basically what we call is the operational, making that whole thing operational is important. So that is your the what we call is a change. So now if you see in the industry, people are not talking much about the business analysis or the project management. They are more talking about the change management or the business transformation. So this is the new buzzword you may hear, but it's simply nothing but actually managing the change is basically, it's all about going, defining and implementing the future operating model. Simple as that. Everyone understood the concept between the software and the change and the project management? Yes. This is a very important question. I must thank Tosin. Um, this is not only important, but this helps you to clear the concept actually, and everything actually revolves around this. Because when you look at something, you need to know where it is coming from, how, what could be the context when we talk about it, and how it will be required. So the Bebok book basically talks about managing the change. Now it has gone from that, the second version number 2 was more revolving around the business analysis, but the version number 3 is more focusing on the change, how a business analyst can handle the change. you know so the strategy analysis is very key chapter actually, and they have incorporated all these factors basically for us to understand the change. So you are basically looking at the larger picture. Okay. All right, so I'm going to basically go to the next level. Next slide. Now, software development life cycle, the next phase we are talking about is a system concept phase, development phase. Now, this is very important now. System concept, or you may call as a solution, vision and scope. Either way is fine. So what we do is do that at this stage. When the business need is approved by stakeholder, the solution enters into next phase to define and detailing of the solution scope. During this phase, business analyst, project manager, and stakeholders define the boundaries and review the proposed solution for further viabilities and suitabilities. So now at this stage, if you're looking at the stakeholders, project managers, business analysts are working together in and explore more, and also not only explore more in terms of the features, functionalities, scope, vision, but also we are exploring more to see that whether it is a suitable or it is viable. This is very key point actually. Unless and until if you find it is not it is a suitable or viable, you can't go ahead. Otherwise, it could be a very risky business. The business analyst creates context diagram to define system boundary. So that's the basically role of the basically business analyst. We have to create the context and define the system boundary, or create the vision and the scope document. Okay. So this is basically, this provides more insight about the volume of the work and the required time and the budget for realizing the solution. Project manager will present the cost and the schedule estimation. Okay. So these are the important factor what we are looking at. Once the business need is approved, the feasibility and appropriateness of the approaches to accomplish the concept is reviewed. So this is a verification validation process at every stage to ensure that the solution what we are proposing is viable, suitable, profitable and doable. Okay. And next we define the system boundary, so we know what is in the scope, what is not in the scope. So that concept and the thinking must be basically start sinking in stakeholders' mind at the early stage. So that will help everyone remain focused on the solution, right? Then we talk about the business cases presented. So what we do is that based on our the experience, then based on the solution, the scope, it is basically the business analyst start working on the business case. So once the rational and the realistic the solution scope, budget and schedules are prepared and reviewed, because this is very important, this is all we need. It is then presented to the sponsor to avail the approval and the funding for the solution. Without this, it is very difficult for you to avail the funding. In addition, the business analyst, project manager and the stakeholder need to justify the investment in the solution by providing detailed calculation on profitability and return on investment, payback period or break-even calculations. Okay. So these are basically various the factors you need to consider before you build your business case. So what we do at this stage is basically we prepare the business case by defining the cost versus benefit analysis, and also considering all the risk we have identified, and see that what is the benefit versus risk analysis. Okay. The business case presented by the business analyst is found, if it is found satisfactory, sponsor may sponsor the development work for the solution with or without any precondition. Now remember, sometimes it is very important that you may think that okay, we presented the business case, we are good to go. No, that is not the case. It is important that the stakeholders, especially the sponsor, may basically have many questions before the sponsor, and it is very important for the sponsor to feel confident at this stage. Okay. Now, what is the role of the business analyst during this stage is basically identify the scope of the solution in terms of the features and functionalities, identify the capacities in terms of performance, reliability, availability, scalability, environment, operational needs. That's again high level non-functional requirement, and feasibility and the initial risk analysis. So these are basically what he or she will have to define. At later stage, we will see what is how the vision and scope document will look like. Then you have is the business case. Business case is cost versus benefit. This is something what we will do. What is a cost versus benefit? So you will have to say this is a investment and this is a benefit. So you have to see whether it is worth it. That is one. And especially when it comes to the investment opportunity, or at the time the cost versus benefit plays a significant analysis plays a significant role in deciding whether to go or no go. Then comes to your appropriateness, the studies for viability and suitability, and we complete the business case. That will include the feasibility and profitability of the solution. Okay. So this is what is our role. Any question at this stage? Yeah, we will do that. Data metrics? Okay. We will have a practical session after this, and at the time we will take one case and we will start with how do we define the business need, and from there we will see how do we define the solution scope and vision, and then later on we will also discuss about how do we calculate the cost versus benefit, So the most important in the business is that when you are investing, especially in the IT related the investment, so they expect the return or the break even in maybe like 18 to 24 months. Okay, so for example, if you are investing $100, so you must get the return. You must generate $100 within 18 months to 24 months, and beyond that it should be a profit. So that's a break even. So that is when we will see it could be X amount of investment, but the return must be you start getting the return at least after 24 months, 18 to 24 months. So that is basically the calculations are done. So, and the benefits, then we will talk about how the benefits are calculated in a different ways. There are tangible benefits, intangible benefits. Then we also talk about what are the costs can be involved, when and how do we basically consider what is the cost and what is the revenue, what is the benefit within that. So we have to quantify that, and we will take few cases to quantify them, just for us to understand and how the calculations can be done. So there are, again, depend on the situation, context, scenarios, complexities. The calculation can be extremely complex, but our goal here is to understand the concept. So we will, when we do the practical session, we will understand the business case and related details conceptually and also with few examples. Okay. Okay, next one we talk about is the planning phase. This is very important now, planning phase. Now I'm going to basically talk about the project planning. Okay, then we will see the role of the project manager. The project planning starts once the sponsor approves the fund after reviewing the solution in the form of high-level solution features, functionality, risk, overall feasibility and profitability of delivering the solution. That means they will review your business need document, solution scope document and the business case. Okay. While business analyst is busy with planning phase for the requirement and the requirement management life cycle, project manager works on basically resource management, employees with the skill set and the plan for scaling up with the timeline. IT resource, that is a hardware solution hardware, software, database, networking, communication channels, and other technical needs to start the solution or the project development. Okay? So this is the basically what the planning phase happening. Now, project manager may need to check if there is any special tool or specialized software is required for developing, testing, and deploying the solution. Further, the detailed analysis is required for legal requirements for managing the data related customers and defining employee role with the help of business analyst and HR. Okay, so the project manager uh, has a larger role. So I mean both business analyst and project manager have a different role, but project manager here is basically um, looking at other aspects as well, like resource management and then the schedule management. Along with that, he or she also have to see any tools are required or any what we call any other legal requirements are there for managing the data related to the customers or defining the employees. Here, when if you are building the solution for European or US customers, then there is a Privacy Act is very serious, and that you have to basically incorporate those requirements as well. So that's one is part. So the solution must be as per the industry standards, and in terms of the security and in terms of basically um, uh, uh, the maintainability and availability. So there are many other parts are there, but especially in terms of the security, you must adhere to the international standards or the industry standards. Okay? Because if tomorrow anything happens or any legal issue happens, so you'll have to basically prove. Sometimes you may have to face the government auditor in the legal cases. So then these are the factors are basically uh, you know presented to the government officials to say that okay, this is how we have considered uh, mm, uh, we have basically all these requirements we considered to um, build the safe and secure solution. So this is these are all your basically documentations will be very useful at later stage. I'm sure you must have heard the target case, right? That was very famous, and I'm sure it must have made a big dent in Target's the brand name. Then you have is a project manager will review the project plan and to ensure that the required capability is delivered on time within budget. To achieve this, the detailed review is conducted along with other technical team members to estimate the project resources, schedules, activities, tools, and other relevant data. Okay, so that is basically what is happening at the planning stage. So let's basically recap. In the planning phase, project manager will plan for concepts further developed to describe how the business will operate once the approved solution is implemented, so that you are understanding that what will be the future operating model. So that is basically it's talking about. So once it is deployed, how it will be operated. So you'll have to basically capture all the details. Then assess the system that will impact the employees and the customer privacies. Ensure that the product services provide the required capability. So whatever you are building, that must provide the required capability. So it must be built on time, within the budget, and within the project resources, activities, schedules, and the tools are defined. Okay. So let's basically go to the next level. Now this particular slide is focused on the BA role during this time. So for the business analyst, basically he or she will work on plan for the BA deliverables based on the BA approach. Now if you remember, yesterday we spoke about the BA approach. BA approach is depending on the which project management methodology we adopt for implementing a particular solution. For example, it could be waterfall or the traditional methodology, or it could be modern or agile kind of. If it is waterfall, then deliverables will be different. If it is agile style, then it will be different. deliverables, right? So that's what the business analyst have to do. Then the business analyst will have to basically identify the stakeholder and understand the stakeholder engagement requirements. That's the basically the stakeholder analysis. Then business analysts also have to basically plan for the BA governance, how the governance, project governance will work, what are the different committees will be there. There could be management committee, steering committee, working committee, and who are the stakeholder will be part of the committee, what will be their role within that committee, who will make the decisions that are basically will be captured, and how often we will meet, how do we make the decisions, what kind of a communication will be happening during that time, and any are we using any tools like that. Okay, so this is all the planning must be done before during the planning phase. Another next part basically we plan for the business analysis information management. How do we manage the information throughout the project and after the project, because the information has to be even accessible to other project team members, so that they can make the they can use these details, and they can avoid some pitfalls using the lesson learned, or they can reuse the requirement, or they can follow certain processes which worked for you, or they can avoid certain things which did not work for you, like that. Okay, then the last is basically planning the BA performance. So BA will also identify what are the key performance areas for the BA, and what are the parameters for the evaluating the performance, and then he or she will discuss with the key stakeholders who are going to evaluate them, and then finally define and document them, right? So this is the way and the business analyst will collaborate with the stakeholders and bring everybody on the same understanding level, so that there are no confusion about the performance, right? Next goes to the this one, the requirement analysis phase. Okay. Let's basically talk about the requirement analysis phase. The requirement analysis here, although it is mentioned requirement analysis and design, but it is simply means requirement elicitation, analysis, and documentation phase. In the project management terms, this requirement analysis phase only happens after the solution is fully defined, after successful completion of eliciting the requirement from the stakeholders. Now, there are two parts of the requirement analysis. If you see the book clearly, the BEVOC, it will show you that the part is you analyze, you elicit the requirement, you plan for elicitation, then you elicit the requirement, then you document them, you confirm them, you scope them, because some requirement may be out of the scope. The stakeholders may give out many requirements, but some may be part of the scope, some may not be. Right? So you will have to basically consider that, and then present and document these requirements in the form of PM. Right? But of course, when you document them, you have to basically verify and validate these requirements against the quality criteria verification, and validating against the solution scope, organization, objective, and these requirements can be presented or documented in formal templates such as business requirements document or the product roadmap. Further, the defined solution is verified and validated against the organization need and capability before it enters into requirement analysis phase. So that's basically what we talk about it. Then you have is in the requirement analysis, typically in the BEVOC definition is we are analyzing them, structuring the requirement, modeling the requirement, and converting those requirements into the solution requirement. That is your preparing the requirement. So that's the stage of requirement analysis. But in the project management lifecycle, it is basically requirement analysis covers all the aspects of requirement. Then in the requirement analysis, business analyst they prioritize the requirement based on the various criteria. For example, after prioritization of the requirement, each requirement is fully defined in terms of the functional and non-functional, because every requirement will have the details of the functional and non-functional. Are you able to hear? Can you hear me now correct clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you, but there's some hissing sound which is very disturbing. In between, it was very clear. Then it started.
There is a bit of a static in the background. What do you mean by static? Let me just check if I can use some. I'm using the microphone right now.
It's clear now, very clear. We are not hearing
Okay,
any
just a
background.
minute. I'm sorry. This
It's
is good.
clear now.
It is clear. Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
All right. The only thing is that the microphone is very difficult to capture what you say because every time it has to be hooked on. So I would request you to type your queries so that I just need to speak so I can just see your queries in the chat. Okay. All right. Okay. Now basically once the requirements are defined, no, let me just a little bit go back. At a requirement analysis, the business analyst will prioritize the requirement based on the various criteria, and we will have a separate session, and we'll cover that one. After the prioritization of requirements, each requirement is fully defined in terms of functional and non-functional requirement and the data requirement. Okay. The requirements are further modeled using various modeling techniques for explaining it to reduce ambiguity, if any. These techniques could be a process diagram, activity diagram, use case diagram, state diagram, data modeling, and as mentioned in the BA technique sections. Okay. Once the requirements are defined in detail as per the stakeholders, that is, a business and technical needs for the system, the design work will proceed. Okay. Each requirement must be measurable, testable, doable, consistent, correct, correlated, concise to proceed. That is your quality criteria. All these requirements are validated by tracing them back to the original business need and the solution scope to ensure that every requirement is in line with the business need. If any requirement found that it is not related or out of the scope, it will be further analyzed if required. Okay, so this is basically all about your requirement analysis phase. Let's see the BA role. The BA role here is basically, of course, the BA will play a key role, that is analyzing the requirement, preparing the solution requirement, right? Then designing through the defining the solution requirement, non-functional requirement, so that's your solution requirement, and then supporting the requirement description through the prototyping, modeling, requirement verification, validation, right? So this is how you will basically be involved. And other than that, the requirement management, that is prioritizing and tracing the requirement, and then connecting the requirement with each other. So that's a kind of the additional role you will be playing along with change management. Okay, so this is the role, and the entire the BA is responsible for entire requirement requirement and requirement management. Okay, so that's the key part here. The question from Tossin is, who actually decides what BA methodologies are adopted in the organization? Okay, the BA methodologies is there is nothing called BA methodology. It is BA approach, we call it. So we will see that is in the first chapter. How do we define the BA approach? Okay, so that is a process is mentioned in the Bebok book. That is a first task. Okay, so in the planning and monitoring section. So and that will have a very lot more detailed discussion. Now next goes to your design phase. In this basically the team is involved in designing the solution, that is defining the physical characteristics of the each subsystem, and then defining the options for the operating models, and then establishing the operating environment. Again, defining the major subsystems and their inputs and outputs, and resources processes are allocated to the resources, and everything that is requiring the user input and approval must be documented and reviewed by the stakeholders. Then detailed design is prepared, detailed architectural design usually. Okay, subsystems identified during the designs are used to create detailed structure for the system, and the business analyst will collaborate with the technical team. Okay, so that's the basically the design phase. Here one more part is missing here. Let me just fix that on the slide. Requirements are basically allocated to the components, and then they are planned for development. So you will know which requirement will go first, or which component will be built first and which will go later. Okay, so that's the release planning, basically planned for release. So, and from after that, once you plan for the releases, and then only then project basically the development will start. So the role for the BA during this support the technical team in solution designing, development and testing activities. Okay, now next is basically development phase. Now here in the development phase, the detailed specification produced during the design phases are translated into hardware, communications, executable software. Okay, and then software shall be unit tested, integrated, retested in the systematic manner, and hardware is assembled and tested. So this is basically during the development phase. What is a BA role here? Development phase activities will include the monitoring the technical work um, to ensure the development is happening as per the functional requirement, reviewing and signing of the test scenarios, test cases, preparing the user manual and complete the use cases if required, managing the changes to the requirements or the solution. Okay, so that's your role. And of course, along with that, you have a status meeting, then you have a steering meetings, and a lot of other administrative work is involved. Then you have is the integration phase. Various components of the system are integrated before testing. It is shifted in the sandbox or the testing environment. BA role during the integration phases. BA supports technical team in interpreting the requirements and implementing the requirements. Okay. Then BA reports the issues and or the bugs or the quality of the integration as appropriate. Next basically is the testing phase. In this phase, again it depends whether the content writer is again depends on the what kind of a content you are creating. User manual, business analyst can prepare or the users can prepare. Okay, that is one A. And the content, if it is a operations related or the technical document, then that could be a technical person may write the content. Okay, and sometimes the users manual is also written by users who are testing or who are part of the UAT. They may also write because they know their role and they have been part of the requirement elicitation process. They have been monitoring the whole solution. They've been they are tested, so they may also write based on their understanding, so they can communicate with their colleagues. Okay, so again it is depending on the situation. Anyone can prepare. Yes, BA also can prepare the user manual. Question? here it is a BA role in the testing phase. It is roll out the idea or the request in the testing phase, monitoring the solution performance in the production area. Oh, I think this is mistake. The slide is okay. Monitoring the solution performance in the production environment. Maybe if you are doing the in UAT in the production environment, which may not be. I think there is this slide is for implementation phase, not in the testing phase. Let me just check what happened to my previous slide. Okay, in the testing phase, basically, the business analyst will monitor the testing activities. They will be part of all the testing meetings, and they will also review the number of bugs issues have identified, number of issues have been fixed, and also if there are any serious problems are there. And if there is nothing serious, then they can basically let the testing go to the next level. In case if there are any issues and all, then they have to report back to the stakeholders and keep them informed how the testing is going on, what is the overall quality of the solution, what they should expect, and how things should go. And if there is any delays are there, then they also need to be communicated. Okay, and then they actively conduct the UAT with the users and document the UAT feedbacks and reviews, and that will be also presented. Okay, so this is your testing phase. And next is basically implementation phase. In the implementation phase, as you already know, the solution is basically installed or made operational in the production environment or the user community where the users start interacting. This is initiated after the system has been tested and accepted by the users. Then the phase continues until the solution system is operating in the production environment in accordance with the user demand. So that is basically is your implementation phase. But what is the BA role here? Basically, you have to ensure, you have to monitor the rollout of the idea and the request is done appropriately, monitoring the solution performance in the production or the user environment. When you implement a solution, it may not function exactly the way it is. The reason is when you develop and test, it is done it in a very secluded environment, and you may you simulate the solution using few records. But when you put them into the user community and the production environment or the pre-production environment, so at the time it starts interacting with the real-time situation. So the real-time scenarios, the real-time data, then again connected, receiving and sending out the data to the upstream and downstream systems. So that all the things, so that solution actually been tested well at that situation. Sometimes the solution may break down, sometimes there could be issues, there could be bugs, there could be some other things are there, or it may not function the way it is, even though it did during the development and testing phase. So this is something which the BA need to monitor closely, how it is functioning, whether there are any serious issues, and if they are, then they have to report back. If the solution does not meet a particular quality standards, then they may have to inform the stakeholders and request for the rollback. Yes, in the serious situation it is possible. Then you may also consider them the other things like providing the status report to the business stakeholders on a regular basis, conducting the user training as and when it is necessary. It could be before implementation phase or after during the implementation phase, that is fine. Okay, so this is what you are doing during the implementation phase. You also, there are some additional here, obtain the user feedback and submit the post-implementation documentation and conduct the post-implementation reviews. I think there's a little bit of a duplication here. Okay, so that is what the BA's role during pre and post-implementation phase. Next is basically operation and maintenance phase. System operation is ongoing. System is monitored in accordance with the user requirement. Okay. Then you have is a needed system modifications are incorporated. Operational on is periodically assessed through in-process reviews to make system more effective and efficient. It continues as long as system adapts to respond and organization's need. Okay, so this is basically it remains in the operations. So what is a BA role? You have to you see that enriching and enhancing the solution by adding or removing the features or functionalities that is in the form of many projects that are needed by the organization and the stakeholders, and continuing the process as long as solution is in the life cycle. Okay, so that is what you do during the operation maintenance. Okay, I'm going to address your queries later. Just hold on. Now this is the last phase. It's called termination and disposition phase. Many of the project management life cycle do not include this one, but this is a key part when the solution is no longer required, so that or it becomes absolute, or the business goals have changed and they want to basically discontinue particular product and services. So these are the times when you're looking at the discontinuing the whole thing. Then you want to terminate, because to keep it live will become a more expensive affair, or it could create some other legal or some other administrative issues, right? So when you when it reaches to a certain point where it is no longer needed for various reasons, then you have to basically propose for disposition. Then disposition activities will ensure orderly termination of the system, then preserving the vital information about the system, then emphasis on the preservation of the data processed by the system, so that data is effectively migrated to another system or archived for a potential future access. Now that disposition itself is a mini project, so you'll have to identify the how you want to dispose it off. So you have to appoint a project manager for that. Then you have to inform your business customer, business stakeholders, vendors, customers that we are planning to dispose it off or terminate, or it will no longer be available. So this is the first step, is that to inform. First, once you decide, then it is formed as a project and it goes as a scheduled and planned. And the first part is that communicating with the business stakeholders, including the customer, that it will not be available. So if there is any billing cycle is there, allow the customer to complete one billing cycle, and also give them enough time to make them alternate arrangement. That is one part. Then once it is communicated and all the stakeholders, then after that it can be taken down, so it is not live any longer. So if it is on a web services or on the website or whatever it is, so it will be inactive, or it will be that particular the solution will not be available. Okay, but you have to ensure that you inform everyone, because otherwise it will attract legal problems. That's one part. The second part, then once you basically take down, then you have to take the backup, archive all your data as per the legal requirement. Remember that your all the business data is important for you to basically archive them well. Okay, and the second part, what you need to do is then format all the hardware and release them for the future use. And archival must be done so that you have to ensure who are the stakeholders who need to access this information as and when it is required. So that is how you have to archive and give them appropriate information. For example, you have archived in the hard disk, there could be some password, so give it that, document that, and give that details to the required stakeholders. Now preserving data is very important, because most of the regulators will basically want to every businesses to preserve the data for certain time. Like for example, if it is accounting, then you have to preserve the data for 7 years. Okay, and the second part is that the business may discontinue one product or services, but they want to preserve the customer data so they can use that information for future product and services when they do it. Okay, so I'm just going to address this one. Hold on. The BA is a role during the disposition. It is planning for the decommissioning. You may call decommissioning or disposition, informing the relevant stakeholders about the last day of operation and the future actions, creating the list of the data for archival, list of the data to be archived and the details of the access right, planning and archiving the data after the last day of operations, monitoring the technical team who archives the data as per the archival requirement, monitoring the technical team who disconnect and formats and assign the resources to other projects. That is how you complete the work. And of course, document all the activities and hand over this to the your stakeholders. Now let me go to the first question. The question is, in addition to BRD and FRD in our project, we have a BA involved in updating and creating Confluence page. What is Confluence page?
Basically, see, like we have the Wikipedia pages. So the same we use software Altition, which will maintain all the requirement, all the screens, all the information what the project could consist of. For example, suppose as a developer, I want to develop a screen. So what are the data points? Okay, who will use the screen? How it will navigate to the next page? Suppose all the information are documented in that wiki page or the conference.
Okay, so yeah, that is part of your requirement. If that is you are documented in the wiki page, so you'll have to preserve them. See, when you are talking about these details, so that could be when you are talking about how updating and creating that particular page, that is again your requirement, no? Either you can that is a part of your requirement document. You can document requirements in a different way. You can create a catalog, you can create a product roadmap, you can create a process diagrams, you can create a BRD, FRD, software SRS, that is software requirement specification, or you can create the wiki, whatever you want to, whatever the format it could be. But those are, end of the day, those are your requirement, and the requirements are not static, they are dynamic, because they may change as per the requirement. They may change again if the dependent requirement is changed or the situation changes, right? So all will be maintained by business analyst. That is all we discuss in the plan BA information. If you see that planning phase, so that is a time we talk about who will create the document, who will what we call maintain them. Maintaining means updating constantly, and who will distribute the information. Now again, maintaining is not good enough. You need to inform the relevant stakeholders if anything is changed or anything is updated. For example, you have a 10 stakeholders, but you have to discuss a particular requirement with only 2 stakeholders because they are only relevant for that. And when you discuss with them, and then I find that the requirement has been changed and you require to update that particular requirement, so you update it. And that once the updation is happening, you have to inform to everyone. You don't know who is a stakeholder who may be impacted by that updation, or who may be directly or indirectly will be influenced or affected by that. So this is what we need to do, is that we need to maintain. Okay, so this is a part of the planning.
No, so my question here is, apart from the point I mentioned in the conference page, what are the other ways in which a change is converted to the user? For example, see, it's quite possible we are developing something and
I can't hear actually. There's a dog barking actually. I'm sorry, I can't hear that one. If it is a change management related question, I would request you to hold on, and we will address this question when we are handling the requirement and the change. Because right now, without going through all the process, you will not be able to understand what you are talking. This will be automatically will be addressed, but I would request you to hold on and bring this question back when we are talking about managing requirement lifecycle. So that is what we call a chapter, that this question will be appropriate at that time. The next question is, will purging of production data due to some reason is a part of disposition phase? No, it is not. production data is purged due to some reason, how, for what reason? It could be, if it is a technical problem, that is not a disposition. Disposition is a very formal process where the management and the team, technical team, and the every stakeholder come together and decide that they do not need a particular solution. They want to discontinue using that solution. So that is the discussion happens, and after that it is a deliberate activity of purging the data and formatting all of them. Again, it depends. If you are purging the production data for disposition purpose or termination purpose, that is a disposition. But due to some technical problem it happened, that is not a disposition. Okay. And if it is I mean, if it is for some other reasons are there, then that is not disposition. Okay. Any other queries? Purging data could be
So like
backup or the risk plan. What is that? Purging data could be backup. Um, the backup is a part of the maintenance. It is not for the part of the disposition. For example, every day, or there may be some schedule where you take a backup. That is not a purging the data, because that backup you reuse it. Okay, and that is kept in a different way, and that is a part of your continuous operations. The disposition means you are going to disconnect everything, and that the your database, whatever your the data which is archived, it will be kept in somewhere else, and it will be only used once in a while. uh, that is not a disposition, let me just tell you. And I don't know
so
what is a
here
risk
like
plan.
purging of,
I'm sorry.
sorry to interrupt you. So like here example purging of data, like in database they could be like whatever like the project is, there are millions of records,
Mm.
and we're not able to hold up
Mm-hmm.
like for 6 months there are millions of record, and we want to purge data which is last 6 months old, because
Yes,
that
yes,
is of
but
old
that is the
usage.
archival
So that is not
process. No, that's not the disposition. I understood what you're trying to say. Like for example, if you go to Bank of America website, okay, if you are a customer, you can only download the statement for last 12 months. You cannot download previous statements. Otherwise, then you have to call them up and pay the money, and then they will download for you and give it to you. So that is what we are talking about, the purging the data until certain time, so that because the operations, the systems can't hold on to so much of a data. Am I right? Is that what it is? So in that case, that is a part of your operation maintenance process. It is a part of your the maintenance process. It is not a part of disposition. Disposition is that completely remove the system. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Let's take the 1 minute